Hello, welcome to another Alpha Strike We Play video, and today Tarron and I are talking about charging.
Charging.
$9.95 or something like that, I don't know.
For a physical attack, that's pretty cheap.
It is. Medicare covered and everything.
Considering the amount of damage and crap that happens, you're getting a bargain, buddy.
Healthcare is important to a mech warrior, I'm sure.
Do it.
So what is charging? Let's just...
Yeah. So charging is basically you going at another mech and ramming into them. That's it. That's what you're doing. You are not allowed to make any weapon attacks. That is an important thing to remember. You are not allowed to make any weapon attacks, not torso, nothing, if you do a charge. You declare your charge in the movement.
Yes.
And you're only allowed to charge something that has finished its movement. Okay, so you can't predict where something's going to go and go, I'm going to charge that X. It has to have stopped and have its movement done. So you can't, even though this would be hilarious, you can't have two mechs charge each other because that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to have finished your movement before you can be charged. And you can only be the target of one charge.
Although it would be very Pacific Rim, but
yeah, it would be.
No,
yes, no, you can't.
But you can't do it.
No,
it's one of those physical attacks that sort of it's a big investment. Really.
Yeah, it's huge,
and it's planned over the entire turn. So, is it worth it? Well, we're going to tell you.
Yeah,
I think it is, but it depends.
We'll see. It's complicated and it's difficult to pull off, but if you can do it properly, and doing it properly means having a really good piloting skill.
Yeah, indeed.
And very little damage on your mech. Very good piloting skill and the ability to get a situation lined up.
What's interesting with this one is that the piloting skills of the two units that are involved actually influences your target number.
Yeah.
So if you're a better pilot, then you're going to have a better time of doing it.
You'll have a positive or a good modifier.
Yeah.
If you're a worse pilot, then you're going to have a bad modifier. It's so we'll go into that. I think I did everything. Oh, the other thing is that when you are charging someone, you are going to end up, assuming you succeed, you are going to end up in their hex. Now, different to pushing, you actually have to have movement points in order to move into that hex. You have to have enough left over from your move to allow you to move into that hex, assuming it was clear. Right? So if you're charging someone in a wooded hex, you have to have 2 movement points left at the end of your charge in order to actually complete the charge. So if you don't have them, you can't even declare it.
Yeah.
Okay? Bear it in mind.
And the prohibited terrain, I think, was
yes.
talking about that too.
So you can't, if the target unit occupies prohibited terrain for the attacking unit, the attacker cannot charge. So meaning the player can't declare a charge attack during the movement phase. You can't even pretend you're going to do it.
Yeah. You're
not allowed to. Vehicles can only ram, which is a vehicle-based charge attack.
Yeah.
We'll go into that when we get to vehicles. Yeah, so I guess piloting skill modifiers now. Yeah, it's worth noting that if you do take damage during the weapon attack phase, because this happens in the physical attack phase still.
Yeah.
So you declare it in the movement, you don't get to shoot, and then you finish it in the physical attack phase. If you do take damage in the weapon phase, that drops your movement points. That doesn't matter. That'll take... that'll happen next round.
Yeah, that's fine.
You're still allowed to keep going. But funny stuff can happen if you're forced to make piling skill checks and possibly fall over, but we'll go into that in a minute. You can only be the target of one, and prohibited terrain's out. You have to have your movement points left. Piloting skill. Right, so you start with your base.
Yep.
Then you have to compare your piloting skill to your target's piloting skill. So whenever one unit charges, or DFAs, which is death from above, we'll get into that later, but whenever one unit charges another, compare their piloting skill ratings and use the difference between the two skill ratings as a modifier to the 2-hit number. If the target skill rating is lower, add it to the 2-hit number. If the attacker's piloting skill rating is lower, subtract it from the 2-hit number. So if you've got a piloting skill of 2 and you're up against someone with a piloting skill of 5 and you're charging them, you will get a -3 to your charge attack. If it's the other way around and a pilot that is at piloting skill level 5 is charging someone with a piloting skill level 2, they will get a +3 modifier to their piloting, to their check. And that is really important because that can get big very, very quickly, depending on how elite pilots you like going.
But the potential damage can still really make you think about it to try it.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Especially if you've taken damage and your weapons systems are starting to go down, you haven't got many choices left. Getting physical like that might still be the best option.
You're out of ammo and it's a level variant terrain thing. You can push, but you can charge them. It still displaces them like push does.
Yeah.
So there's still the hilarity that comes from pushing people off cliffs into lakes, which we've seen. But also you're doing quite a lot of damage to start with. And again, it's all dependent on your weight, on the weight of the mech that's doing it.
Yep.
So that's your modified target number. There's not really any other major target number modifiers. I mean, the usual ones apply, speed, all that sort of stuff.
Yep. It is important to note that during the weapon attack phase, if you're the charging unit and you get shot at, or there's an instance where you have to do a piloting skill check and you fail, you fall, you will basically go into, and you're on pavement, you will go into like a skid.
Yep.
We've done skidding before in some of the other videos.
I think we even did an unintentional skid into someone. I think we were skidding into a catapult.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
The cool thing with it, the only saving grace for that is that in the example we did in the skidding, he still had his movement, so he was allowed to try and evade. But the one that you're doing here, he already has to have finished his movement, so you're not going to be able to evade.
You can't get out of the way. So if you still had enough movement while you're skidding, because you do reduce the distance that you travel, it's only half or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you still have enough to reach the hex, then your attack can still go ahead.
Yeah.
But it's considered an unintentional charge, and there's modifiers on that.
I'm pretty sure it's a +2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Check out the well, it'll be down there. Check out the other video for it anyway. We went into it a bit more, and it was funny. Oh dear.
So I've got the example here. Should we'll get started with it, and then we can just do step by step?
Yep.
Do you think that's the way to go? Yep.
Why not?
All right, so here we go. So the Wolverine, he's moved onto the table, and he's ended his movement as a walk with a +1 modifier. So the Griffin pilot, he's the one that's going to be doing the charging. So we've set him up here. He decides to walk, because you don't have to run to do a charge.
You just have to move.
It's just using momentum. That's right. So he chooses to walk. So he has a walk standard of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have to have enough to get into the hex of who you're attacking. So that's fine.
So there's no woods or rubble or anything like that in there to modify it, so it's just a straight 1 movement.
Yep. So he'll go to there, it's walking.
And he'll declare a charge.
So he's declaring a charge.
Right. So you have to do that at the end of the movement phase. And then during the weapons phase, you're not allowed to fire anything.
No.
Technically, the other guy can fire at him if he wants to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So you could just alpha strike the dude and let it go.
If you know it's coming.
See what happens.
So let's assume that he did some shooting, but it didn't really make. No piloting. It hasn't done anything. Yep. So they're both, all their criticals are fine.
Okay. So you start with your basic piloting skill.
Yep.
And then you add your modifiers for that. And then we compare piloting skills. Now we've been doing these as standard pilots.
Even. So
they'll be 5s each. So there's no modifier there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, if you muck around with your piloting stats, if you're playing to BV, it's a really good idea to have a look at the sort of things you can get away with various piloting and gunnery skills. It's fun. Okay, so that doesn't apply. It's just normal basic modifiers. So he starts with a 5.
So he's got 5, and he walked, so that becomes 6. Someone stole my 1. 6. His opponent is a movement modifier, so that goes to 7. There's no cover or anything like that in the way. Like you said, the pilots are even, so that doesn't modify anything.
Yep.
So it is a 7 to attack. All right.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
All right, let's see
So
if he can.
see what happens.
Let's see if he can do it.
It did 7.
Good
There you
lord,
go.
that doesn't usually happen.
No Photoshop in there, baby. That's all natural.
Okay, so damage. Damage is the bit we're all waiting for.
That's right.
So if the attack succeeds, both units take damage from the collision. This is a downside. You both take damage. The defender takes 1 point of damage for every 10 tons the charging unit weighs, multiplied by the number of hexes moved by the attacker in the movement phase, rounding fractions up. So they're 55-ton mechs. They're both 55-ton mechs.
So that doesn't include the hex that you're moving into.
No.
Just the hexes that you travel to get to there.
Yeah.
Like that.
So or the one that you came from. It's the number that you actually moved through.
Yeah. Yeah. So 55 rounded up 6.
So 6
times
multiplied by the 4. So
in,
24.
In 5-point groups, yeah?
Yep. So it'll be 5-point damage groupings and on the appropriate hit location table, which will be the front.
Yep.
So yeah, he'll have 4 locations taking 5 points of damage and 1 location taking 4.
Yep. Well, just for fun, let's have a
Oh,
look
just
at
for the hell of it, why not? Okay.
So there's the first 3. So we've got, looks like an arm. I'm just seeing you've got a, center torso. So there's definitely enough armor there. There's a leg, definitely enough there. And the 4th one, it's another arm. So
Bugger.
it is still a piloting check, obviously, because
Yep.
it's 20 plus. But but we'll get to that. So
okay, so the charging unit takes 1 point of damage for every 10 tons the target weighs, rounding fractions up.
okay.
So he'll take 6.
So 5 and 1.
Yep.
So let's have a look at the 5. That's a 9. That's a leg.
Yeah, that's a leg.
That's fine. And 1 point torso. That's fine.
Okay.
So nothing to worry
So
about.
nobody's taken any devastating damage there, but one of them has taken over 20 points, which is a piloting skill check.
Yep.
So let's see what else happens. Okay, location after attack. There's more rules there about if you're charging vehicles or if you're charging buildings and that sort of thing, but we'll probably go into them when we do those specific types of things. So if a charging attack succeeds, the target unit must move as if it had been pushed, and the attacker advances into the target's hex. Now, if he missed, he would have to displace himself to the left or the right, depending on which way he wanted to go. But he hit, so he gets to displace him back directly 1 and follow him up. And he has to spend those movement points to follow him up. That was important. And then after any successful charging attack, the attacking and target mechs must make piloting skill rolls modified by a +2, plus all other applicable modifiers, or fall in the hex they currently occupy. So, yeah, not good. Not good. The more piloting skill checks you have to make to avoid falling, the worse I feel.
Yeah, that's not your game, eh?
It's not
at all.
All right, so let's see if our attacker manages. Oh, okay. See if our attacker manages to stay upright.
Yep. 5,
+2. Yep. So
2,
7.
5.
He needed a 7, so he's fine.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So they're both fine. But you can see how devastating that sort of attack could be, especially if you have something that is seriously outclassed but is still a decent sized mech. You can do some real damage. I mean, you take a locust.
Yeah,
it's only 2 divided by 10, so it's 20 points. Divided by 10 is 2 points. But you can move up to 12.
Yeah.
You can move up to 12. You're not going to be able to move the full 12 because you have to save movement points to move into the hex you're going to. But if you get a straight line from you to the target, all clear hexes, you can technically move 11 hexes. So that's 22 points of damage. Of course, if you charge into an atlas, you're going to die.
Yeah, it's like a big bug on a windscreen. But if you go against, say, another lighter mech,
yep,
you know, or even something like 40 tons or something like that.
22 points of damage to anything short of a heavy mech can be seriously devastating. Seriously devastating. Especially seeing as it's it's put over the whole mech. So it's a standard location roll. If you've got a good piloting skill and your enemy has a bad piloting skill, then you not only have an advantage in the actual target roll, but you have an advantage in the fall afterwards. Okay, so it's definitely a tactic to consider. It's not one I'd go for, but it's definitely a tactic to consider.
Yeah. So they don't have to be directly in front of you at the start of the movement phase. You just have to end with them in your front arc.
So
when the physical attack phase comes around.
That locust to enemy example, that's not going to happen. But even turning and twisting and going through extra hexes, you could probably still build up maybe 8 hexes of movement, maybe 7. And that's, 14, 16 points of damage. That's not to be sneezed at. That's not something you could put out with a locust with the weaponry that it has.
No. A couple of machine guns?
A couple of machine guns and a medium laser. You're better off charging people.
Well, especially if you're 11 hexes away. You're out of range of weapons.
If you're in a direct 11 hex line, you could do 22 points of damage. If you have to move around and stuff, then you'll probably do less than that. But, I mean, still, like I say, 14, 16 points of damage.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Especially if you can do it while they're above you, or like above a drop-off or next to a drop-off. That's, wow. That's nasty. I mean, 22 points of damage for me hitting you, and then you fall off the edge and take another, 15, 20 points of damage.
But statistics-wise, if your piloting is better than the opponent, not just for the initial attack, but just to force them to do piloting checks, you're more likely to pass them.
Yeah.
So you're giving yourself bonuses on the attack. You're doing lots of damage.
Yep.
You're less likely to fall over. They fall over. Then they're prone if they can't get up, or you don't know. Like, again, you could have pushed them into water.
Yep.
That's...
And
nice.
you don't have to move a long way. It helps you build up the damage, but you don't have to move a long way. So, I mean, you could move 1 or 2 hexes and push a charge into someone on the edge of a cliff. It's perfectly viable. And it's also important to note that you can attack people with a charge even if they're on 1 level higher or 1 level lower. So you don't actually have to get up onto the level that they're on or be on the same level. So you can be one up or lower, which is cool. And it'd still displace. You have to have the movement points to move in, though. It's a big deal. So if you are charging someone who's a level higher, it's going to cost you extra to move into that hex. If they're in woods, it's going to cost you extra to move into that hex. So you have to remember that.
I imagine charging attacks being quite useful in like breakthrough scenarios.
Yeah.
Because you've got to move through the enemy to get to the other side. So want to do that. You want to move maximum speed.
Yep.
So just...
But you still want to do some damage if you can.
Oh, yeah, sure.
The one disadvantage is that you are going to take damage. So if you succeed, you are going to take damage. So, like I say, the Locust going up against an Atlas, he's splattered. He's going to bang. Yeah. Because that's divided by 10 is 10 points of damage. And to a standard everyday Locust, that's going to hurt. But sometimes it's worth it. And especially if you're using a fast, medium to heavy mech, like you say, for breakthrough scenario types, where you have to get from one end to the other end and that's your only objective. If you've got a fast, reasonable weight mech, then charging is a viable option. Yeah. A very viable option. Anywho.
So that's charging. Yeah. I don't know. I still like it. It's options. Physical attacks are still pretty good. So yeah. I kind of like that. So.
It's prohibited terrain was one thing. So if the hex into which the target unit will be displaced is prohibited, then neither attacker nor the target units move.
Yeah. But
you still do all the other stuff. So you still take all your damage. You still have to do a piloting check for a successful charge, but you can push them off levels, obviously. But yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah. So that's charging attacks.
Go
guys.
Charge someone today.
So if you've done any of these sorts of things in your games with BattleTech, let us know. Leave some comments so other people can see what happened. So.
Yeah, someone else can have a laugh as well.
That's it. All right.
Dear.
So we're going to do more. So that's it for now, though. Yeah.
Yeah. Bye guys.